all your uniform needs on ESPN Radio.
Welcome into Second Down right here on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel alongside Cam Ursery. Glad to have y'all hanging out on this Monday afternoon. So much to dive into today. Braves win the series against the Nationals, but actually, Cam, end the weekend back further in the division than they started it because the Philadelphia Phillies have reeled off 8 wins in a row. Going to dive into that. What was a big weekend for the Braves? We've passed the Mets. So Braves fans, you can make fun of your Mets fans out there. Excited about that, but still 2 games back in the division. We'll dive into an interesting weekend and kind of like the end scene in Avengers where you see the portals start opening up. The Braves, those portals are starting to open up. You're starting to see some guys come back to help out this lineup. So we'll dive into all that here in a second. Some interesting list that Georgia's at the top of that you probably don't want to be at the top of. We'll dive into that coming up here in a few minutes as well. But I did want to start today, Cam, with remembering the legendary and now late Bobby Bowden, who passed away over the weekend, the second winningest coach in the history of college football, just behind Joe Paterno, and a guy who I think probably the most legendary football coach, at least in the South, right? When you think about college football in the South, it doesn't get any bigger than Bobby Bowden. All the years he spent at Florida State, at Marshall before that, and he's from Birmingham, Alabama, but what he was able to turn a Florida State program into, and then really, I think, kind of change the course of college football by building a brand for the ACC when the ACC didn't have a huge brand. So I did want to start today with remembering Bobby Bowden a little bit and some of the unbelievable statistics that he's had. I think the one that immediately comes to mind, and I think it'll kind of stick with Braves fans a little bit too. I know we're talking college football versus Braves, but Bobby Bowden in the Florida State Seminoles from 1987 to 2000, so 14 consecutive years, they finished inside the top 5. Think about how absurd that is. Let's think about where there are our home college, so we'll go with Georgia. Let's think about what's happened in the past 14 years with Georgia, right?
Up and down.
So go back to 2007, and that was Matt Stafford's sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have Matt Stafford, Noshawn Moreno, Muhammad Massaquoi. That's the year Georgia goes 11-2. The year after that, they go 10-3. And then you have some pretty bad years from 2008, 2009. Aaron Murray gets there. His freshman year is pretty good, and then it gets really good sophomore, junior, senior year. Georgia's winning 10-plus games every year. Then you go, again, you have a little bit of a break. So typically what happens with a majority of football programs is you have a really great quarterback, and then he leaves. Unless you're the elite of the elite of the elite, there probably is going to be a drop-off there, right? That's what's happened to Georgia over the last 14 years where, yeah, you're good for 3-4 years. And I don't even think during those years Georgia had 4 straight top 5 finishes, right? They did it 14 years in a row.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's one. That has to be one of the, if you're doing like top 10 impressive stats of all times in college football history, to lead a program and be top 5 14 consecutive years, which you think about how much changes in football just in a decade, right? Where throughout Bobby Bowden's tenure, I mean, if you start in 1987, there's still a lot of people running the triple option from under center, right? There's still a lot of I formation triple option stuff going on. And then you're moving to when he's winning the national championship in 2000 with Chris Weinke, they're 4 wide in the shotgun with Peter Warrick, right? So it's just the ability to adapt in all those years. He won 2 national championships, 377 career wins, as I said, is the second most of all time, and 21 bowl wins is the second most among all coaches all time. So just the stats are there. You can look at a page and know Bobby Bowden is one of the greatest coaches of all time. But I think it's who Bobby Bowden was as a person that is where the reverence really comes from for him, and not taking anything away from any other coach, but just anyone you ask who has spoken to Bobby Bowden and been around him. I know 4 or 5 people in here in and around our company who have had limited experiences with Bobby Bowden say nothing but the fact that he took the time and he was kind to them, and he showed interest in them as people. I think that speaks so much more to who he was than any stat ever could. And you look at his sons that have gone on to be amazing coaches at the highest levels of college football, some still active in college football. I know Terry Bowden still active in college football right now, but stepping away to deal with the death of his father. But just as a man, as a person, as a Christian, right? Because I think that's one of the biggest things. You think about Mark Richt, right, and who he was as a spiritual leader for a lot of his guys. He credits that to Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden showing him his and helping him find his spirituality and finding who he was supposed to be as a person. You think about all the people Mark Richt has helped touch. I think that's a really good microcosm for Bobby Bowden is take Mark Richt and multiply that times say 100 every year for as many years as he coached. It has to be in the thousands of people whose lives he's positively affected like that. And then you spread that out into who those people have positively affected. I think college football and the world really lost a truly special person.
Yeah, he touched a lot of people. I mean, you see the tweets going out and the condolences sent out from former players, just players in general. We saw Deion Sanders make a Twitter and Instagram post about Bobby Bowden. He's a trailblazer in the college football community. I mean, we're talking about a guy, 1993 national championship, 1999 national championship, 370-something wins in college football, second most all-time, 21 bowl wins. Like you said, that's a stat I didn't know, finishing 14 straight years in the top 5. I think people take that for granted. People will say, "Oh, he only won 2 times." People take that for
about
granted.
What that means, though, right?
That's a lot.
Because that's where I was kind of making the comparison with the Braves. Is people look at the 14 straight division titles and how nuts that is, because that's over a decade, almost a decade and a half, where you didn't have an off year.
Exactly.
Where you were right there every single year. Most fan bases hope to be in that conversation once every 3 or 4 years, right? To legitimately at the end of the season be a top 4 or 5 team. For 14 straight seasons, Florida State fans were there.
We've said it over and over again here at the station.
Alabama was outside the top 5 not too long ago because Tua got hurt and Mac Jones had to play.
So imagine that. That's a model of consistency. And we've said it here at the station plenty of times. If the Falcons win the Super Bowl or the national championship just one time, we're happy. We're set for the next 15, 20 years. We're talking about a guy that's going almost 2 decades straight in the top 5, giving his fan base something to cheer about every single year for 2 decades straight. We haven't even seen that with Nick Saban. I've looked at highlights where they were ranked number 13 at times playing Georgia when we was ranked number 8 and just stomping us. But still, that the model of consistency, that's what you have to respect. He touched a lot of guys, and he was just a big part of college football. He is college football. Yeah, and a lot of people remember his time that he spent at West Virginia when Marshall had the tragedy where the plane crashed. He actually petitioned the NCAA to allow his team to wear the Marshall uniforms and go out there and finish the season for them. NCAA denied that request. And so if you've ever seen the movie We Are Marshall, the scene where he shows them the West Virginia helmet and it has the green cross on the back of it. I mean, just stuff like that. I think just you add that up over time for him. It's just something he did because it's who he was, and he did stuff like that every single year. But you think about what that meant for an entire community inside Marshall, right? But really, what I find fascinating is just his career at Florida State, because growing up, I don't know about you, Cam, but Florida State was just a great football school, right? Like when I was young, and Florida State was a great football school. That's who they were. But prior to him getting there, Florida State was not a good football school, and he had to kind of there was immediate success. He went 5-6 in his first year at Florida State, and then after that, he started winning football games. But as you got into the mid-'80s is when he really started picking up steam. And I think that's another fascinating thing, not to go on too many different tangents here, but think about that now versus then. It took him about a little under a decade to really get his program built and established and going. Right now in college football, you got like 2 or 3 years before people want you fired. Yeah.
So I've said that before. Be careful when you go about firing people, because it's like selling a house. If you sell a house, you have to have a house that you're going to buy, right?
No, people need to look at Dabo Swinney. He didn't win his first 2-3 years. It took him
more
a minute.
than that. Like,
it took him a minute.
There was the running joke. There was the running joke of Clemsoning, where you'd get in the big games and lose. But
Florida State gave him time, and you look what happened. They turned him into a football powerhouse, where, again, from the late 80s to the 2000s, were in the top 5 14 consecutive years. But there's a ton of fun stuff, and I think ESPN.com, Mark Schlabach, has done a really good job. There was a season inside, and I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, but I think it might have been 1987, where Florida State, and this is still true, and I don't know how many people know this, BJ Bennett talked to me about this a lot. Florida State, their budget isn't the same kind of athletic budget that you see at Texas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, right? It's Florida State. Not the University of Florida, it's Florida State. So they don't have the same kind of athletic budget. And in the mid-'80s, they had to play games to collect checks. And so they played what a lot of people consider the hardest schedule ever one season in the mid-'80s, where they played, I think, Ohio State, LSU, Pitt when Pitt had Dan Marino. And I'm trying to there's 2 other schools, but it's just an insane Nebraska was on that schedule, and they ended up going 3-2 inside of those 5 games. But just because the school wanted to, and these are all road games, because the school wanted to collect those paychecks, and so basically the football program was providing for the rest of not just the athletic department, but for the school. They were balancing the budget by going on the road and playing the hardest teams in college football and collecting those paychecks to go on the road to play those games. I find that fascinating. If you go back and look at the numbers for Florida State's attendance once Bobby Bowden got there versus where it is when he retired, I think quadrupled the attendance for Florida State, just because we've talked to Sean Quinn about this, and he's made the comparison, Savannah State's head coach, where he says the football program is the front porch a lot of times to, if you compare the school to the house, right? Where it's the first thing you see, it's what can draw people in. And that's what Bobby Bowden did with that football program. And I think Florida State was like Florida's women's college until like the late 40s. And then like 1947, they switched to Florida State. That's when they started the football program, where they became co-ed. And then they didn't start offering football scholarships until 1951. And so this isn't like the Georgias and Floridas where they were winning national championships in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, right? They didn't start playing football until 1951. And so if you really think about it, Bobby Bowden was the guy for a majority of Florida State's life.
Very long time.
As a football program. He was the football program. And also, I believe, I just want to make sure I get this stat correct because it's phenomenal. Yeah. From 1984 to 2009, Florida State had a player drafted in every draft. So from 1984 until 2009.
Imagine telling a recruit that.
Yeah, you had a player drafted in every draft. 30 of those were first-round picks, and over 150 players drafted inside that period. And so he took, again, a program that had never really done anything. I think another great anecdote from Schlabach here, the coach before Bowden didn't actually coach from the sidelines. He coached in the press box. But it's great. ESPN.com. I really encourage everyone to go read it. But again, from 1984 to 2009, had a player drafted in every single draft. 30 of those were first-round picks. And yeah, you mentioned it. Deion Sanders, just the Charlie Ward, the amount of college football legends that played for Bobby Bowden during his tenure is, I would say, unmatched probably. When you go and look at a lot of the guys that played for him. I mean, Peter Warrick, one of the best college wide receivers ever. You had Warrick Dunn playing for him. So just college football lost a legend, but as Deion Sanders said, legacies never die. And I think Bobby Bowden has left behind a really strong legacy. Our condolences go out to the Bowden family. I know Tommy Bowden, a very good friend of our program, always really gracious with his time. We extend our deepest condolences to the Bowden family. I wish him the best, but know that everyone here has been positively impacted by Bobby Bowden. I know so many people around the country really have been impacted with him. So our condolences to the Bowden family. We've lost a legend, but one that we're going to remember fondly as this 2021 season is just around the corner. We have more to come here on Second Down. We'll be right back after this.
Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. Glad to have y'all hanging out with us on Monday afternoon as we were just 26 days away from Georgia and Clemson kicking off in the Duke's Mayo Classic there in North Carolina. Cam, how excited are you, brother?
Excited but nervous. Very nervous. We've had this talk.
It seems to change like week to week. Like what's your gut feeling right now, 26 days out?
Gut feeling, Georgia wins by a field goal.
All right. We'll see how Cam's feeling next week. All right. Cam, ESPN.com has put out a new story by Adam Rittenberg, and they've tiered out. Adam's good at doing the tiers, right? Mm-hmm. With whether it's not TEARS. I know we've had too many of those. TIERS, tiers for football teams, whether it's quarterback rankings, position rankings, power rankings. They do the tiers. This one is for the biggest underachievers in college football.
Okay.
Would you care to hazard a guess who stands alone at the top of this list by Adam Rittenberger on ESPN.com?
Yeah, Georgia.
Georgia is number one on the underachievers list. And tier one, aptly named the Doghouse. And I find it interesting the criteria that they used for the underachievers. And really, I think we know what to go back for, like the first fact of why they're the biggest underachievers. 1980. Like, just get it out of the way. It's been now what, 41 years or 40 years, I guess, because we're not going to count this year. It's been 40 years since Georgia won a national championship. That seems and is an extraordinarily long absence for what many people, and Adam points this out in his story, what many people consider to be the premier job in college football. Now, let's talk about that for a second. Why would you consider Georgia to be the premier job in college football, Christian? They haven't won a national championship since 1980. They don't put defensive linemen in the first round. I mean, how they get out recruited by Alabama pretty consistently. Ohio State beats them in recruiting a lot. How are they the best job in college football? The results don't reflect the starting point, is what I will say. And when you look at every other job inside of a vacuum, and you talk about natural resources, you talk about fiscal backing, you talk about the conference they play in, you talk about alumni support, you talk about TV deals, you talk about brand recognition, I don't think it gets better in terms of a coaching job than the University of Georgia, and I'll tell you why. Let's compare some of the other schools that they would have to go against, right? Say Texas. A lot of people consider Texas to probably be the best coaching job. I mean, you are the school in the state of Texas, which a lot of people would argue is the most football-rich recruiting ground in the country, right? Here's the problem with that. It's not just Texas. It's Texas A&M. It's Baylor. It's Texas Tech. It's TCU. Before you have other schools starting to come in to try to steal your recruits, you're already battling 6 or 7 other schools.
Okay.
And you're battling the other fan bases. The University of Georgia, I would say 70% of active college football fans in the state of Georgia are Georgia football fans. I would say 15% are Georgia Tech fans, and then the other 15% are split up after that.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that.
Right?
Okay.
In Texas, like I said, Texas A&M, Baylor, Texas Tech, all of those schools are eating that up. TCU, we played the sound last week of the senator from Texas making fun of Texas for leaving because they're 3-7 against TCU in the last 10 matchups.
Yep.
Right? So you start with that. Georgia per capita, per the population, puts more players in the NFL than any other state. They not like total numbers wise, gross wise, they don't put the most in, but like per 1,000 people, there are more players going to the NFL from the state of Georgia than anywhere else in the country.
High school wise.
High school wise. From the state of Georgia, wherever they go off to play from the state of Georgia, there's more than anywhere else.
I can see that. Yeah.
Right? Well, no, it's proven. It's a proven fact over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So
had a lot of
like
talent.
Numbers wise, Georgia isn't putting as many as Texas and California, but I think in Florida, but very recently they climbed to number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So Georgia's number 4 in just mass of amounts of high school students, which is a huge credit to our high school coaches and the talent and the production in this state. But when you think about Georgia,
the only in-state school that they really have to compete against for a player is Georgia Tech.
Ooh, yeah. With all due respect.
Like, no, all due
Yeah.
respect to Georgia Southern and Savannah State. If Georgia comes knocking and you come knocking, it's probably going to be Georgia,
It's going to be Georgia, yeah.
right? And it's just, it is what it is. But Georgia Tech should be the other one. But I think a lot of years inside the triple option and a lot of years without success, Georgia's winning a majority. I think it literally just happened over the weekend where Georgia flipped an offensive line recruit that had been committed to Georgia Tech for a long time. They hadn't offered him. They came through with an offer, and all of a sudden he flips.
Yep.
So I think you start with that. You combine, and I think that's the biggest reason why it would be considered the best job is because, like, look at even Alabama. Alabama's not as good of a recruiting state in terms of the massive amount of players they'll put out. They still have great players, but it's just the number of players they push out. But if you're Alabama, and it's still a top 5 job, but you also have Auburn.
Yep.
Right there that you have to recruit against. Like in-state school right there, Auburn, you have to recruit against.
Who beats
right?
you every 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
Right. It's like if you look at Florida State, Miami, all of a sudden UCF's good. You have USF down there, right? So I mean, there's so many schools just in that state that you have to recruit against. Other reason I'd say Georgia's up there, you have the fiscal support of being in the SEC. That money is real.
Yeah.
Right. And you have a ridiculous fan base. Think about what we're talking about. They haven't won a national championship in 40 years, but name a more
Yeah.
in your face, passionate fan base.
Not too many
And
above Georgia.
it can be annoying. I'll be first one to admit it can be very annoying.
We're like the Cowboys.
Ben Troop has said, he's like, listen, if Georgia wins a national championship, I have to quit.
That's true.
So be careful what you wish for out there, because if Georgia wins, Ben might be gone. But I do find that funny because I think one of the caveats I will say in this, yes, is it ridiculous that it's been 40 years since Georgia's won a national championship? Absolutely. But I will say Georgia has suffered their fair share of heartbreaks on the way to that. Let's just think of a few examples, right? Let's go back to 2002. We were talking about Ben Troop. Georgia loses that game because Ben Troop mossed Hall of Famer Thomas Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And you listen to the story as Ben tells it, he was exhausted. No way in hell he should have caught that pass, but he just kind of muscle memory went up, caught the pass, touchdown. Florida wins. Georgia's only lost that season. They beat the hell out of Arkansas, I think like 30-3 in the SEC championship game, win the bowl game, but they don't get to go to the national championship. So you lose one to the Gators. Right? 2012, you have a tip ball. Chris Conley catches it in the SEC championship game. Clock runs out. And it doesn't matter. Georgia or Alabama goes down there to the Orange Bowl and beats the hell out of Miami. Right? Or not Miami, excuse me. Notre Dame in Miami. They go down and beat the hell out of Notre Dame in Miami. It doesn't matter if it was Georgia or Alabama. The results are going to be the same.
Yeah, they're destroying them.
Right. And then you go most recently, 2017, to a freshman coming off the bench, lefty, got a cannon for an arm, throwing it to another freshman who goes on to win the 2 Heisman Trophy winners.
Yeah, 2 Heisman. No.
One
Heisman
Trophy. 2 Heisman Trophy finalists, one winner.
Yeah,
one winner. So that it's just there has been heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. But I will say, inside of that, and this is where I think Georgia probably deserves to be tier 1 on this list. There have been so many stupid losses.
South Carolina.
Yeah, that's the first one that pops to mind. A couple of times.
Yeah. 2012.
A few times. 2014. Georgia beats Clemson in the season opener. Nick Chubb has his coming out party. Todd Gurley returns a kick for a touchdown. And then the next week, for whatever reason, you decide when you're on the 2-yard line to run a play action pass instead of handing it to Todd Gurley, and you get intentional grounding and end up losing that football game.
I know 2012 they laid an egg, lost like what 35-7. It was one of those years they lost 35-7 when they had Clowney, and that kind of messed up the season. I want to say that was 2012.
That was Aaron.
That
was Aaron Murray heading up to South Carolina. But that one still, even in 2012, you had a chance to go and beat Alabama and then go to the national championship game. So there was a season in there where Aaron Murray and the boys went up to South Carolina, and Ace Sanders and Jadeveon Clowney and
2012
Melvin Ingram and Stephon Gilmore and Alshon Jeffrey just housed them. Was that Connor Shaw at quarterback? Just absolutely housed them. So it's I find it fascinating, but I think Georgia well deserved at the top of the underachieving list. When again,
a lot of coaches say that's the best job in college football. And you haven't won a national championship in 40 years. I think this is the stat that hurts even more than that. So since 1980, here are the teams, like if you're just looking at a map, here are the teams that are around you that have won a national championship.
Oh, man.
Clemson, Alabama, Florida State, Florida, Miami, Tennessee, Auburn, and Georgia Tech
Yeah.
have all won national championships since the last time Georgia won a national championship. So I think well-deserved at the top of the tier list here.
Oh, definitely.
As much as it hurts,
definitely.
I think you can fairly call Georgia the most underachieving football program of at least the last 40 years.
Nah, I agree. We're like the Cowboys of college football. They hype us up every year. We have the best team, best talent.
40 years in a row, preseason national champions.
Preseason national championship.
Come on, we have that record going.
Every year. I mean, even this year, I've seen some guys say there's no way Georgia should not lose a game in the East. They should dominate the East. We'll mess around and lose a game. That's what we do, but we're like the Cowboys of college football. Until we break, I don't like to say curse, but until we break that streak of losing, we're just going to be called that for the remainder of our lives until we win a national championship, which I think this year it's our best chance, but a lot of that could get halted by us losing the first game.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate and be the defender of it. It's so hard to win a national championship.
Very.
And I can't tell Mark Richt or Kirby Smart they're doing a bad job just because they haven't been better. Just because they haven't been better than Nick Saban. Like, I can't tell you've done a bad job because you've been in the same conference as Nick Saban. Now, is your job in what you get paid to do to go out there and beat Nick Saban? Absolutely. But there's one caveat. It's been some dude rolled into Tuscaloosa in 2007. He's been pretty damn good since. So that's 13 years of it right there has been him. Now, the ones before that, there's some huge question marks there. And should you have probably beaten Alabama a couple times in that span? Absolutely. But you haven't been able to get it done. As Cam said, maybe this is a year. We'll find out. That's why we watch the games. That's why they play the games. We'll find out. But as we sit right now, ESPN.com's underachiever tier ranking, Georgia, number one on that list. Texas A&M and UCLA and Texas are up there as well. North Carolina, Arizona State, Maryland, Miami, a lot of those schools up there as well. Michigan, USC. But at least in the not so distant past, those teams like early 2000s were still balling out.
Michigan should be up there though.
Michigan's up there, but I mean, Michigan won a championship, a Big Ten championship in 2004. And
posh.
They won a national title. I want to say they won the year before Tennessee, I think. So 1997.
I mean, man, Michigan, they're just like us. They hype them up just as much as Georgia does.
That's fair, but
they do.
But right now, I think Georgia, rightly so, sits as the king of the underachievers. Agreed. We'll see what happens going forward. We got more to come here on Second Down. We'll come back, talk some Braves on ESPN Radio. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by The Uniform Source. Christian Gokel alongside Cam Urshery here have so much to dive into. Big show coming up today on 3 and Out. Guys, going to remember and honor the legacy of the late Bobby Bowden, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 91. Some great interviews coming up and some memories of his best moments inside of college football. So we'll dive into all of that coming up on 3 and Out. But Cam, the Braves take 2 out of 3 from the Nationals over the weekend, have won 7 out of their last 10. And I think we're getting to the point where we're allowed to be a little bit greedy as Braves fans because you win 2 out of 3, but you're looking at that loss and you're like, you are one bad Will Smith pitch away.
They blew that.
Yeah, from winning 6 in a row and being just a game and a half back in the East instead of 2 games back. So right now, the Braves currently sit 2 games back of the Philadelphia Phillies, but second in the NL East. And the Phillies are just probably the hottest team in baseball right now. Bryce Harper is having an MVP level season, but they've ripped off 8 wins in a row. But as I mentioned, Cam, you win 8-4 on Friday, then you come out on Saturday, you're up 2-0 going into the 9th.
They give up 3 runs.
Will Smith gives up a bomb, first ever career home run for a rookie who was batting .091 and just absolutely launched a ball into the upper deck. And you lose that game 3-2, which was a gut punch. And then you did your damnedest to blow the game yesterday, but you hold on at the end and win the game 5-4. Soler was huge this weekend. He's showing off that power bat, which we talked about. Dude hit 48 home runs a couple seasons ago. If you could rekindle some of that, I think he's batting over 300 right now since he got to the Braves. Jock Peterson in his 22 appearances is just under 300. So the new additions starting to click inside this lineup. And now the reports, if they're true, are coming out. And Kevin believes this with all his heart. Travis d'Arnaud, who had a walk-off game-winning single last night in AAA for the Stripers, he should be back up tomorrow for the Braves in the lineup. So you get your Silver Slugger catcher back. And I think Brian Snicker had a pretty funny remark. He's like, hey, we have a hell of an 8-hole hitter now when you can put Travis d'Arnaud in there. So you get some help back in the lineup. You get your best catcher back. Hopefully, and listen, respect. I appreciate what you did. Hopefully we don't have to see any more Kevin Smith for the remainder of the season, because you want to talk about just a guaranteed out. That's been tough to watch. So you slide Travis d'Arnaud in there. And then I was talking about the Avengers assembling, Cam. Huascar Ynoa. Coming back after if you're talking to a professional pitcher, what's the one thing with their body you're telling them they can't do?
The one thing they can't do.
You're a professional pitcher. Because for me, it's saying punching things with your throwing hand.
Well, yeah, clearly
that's number 1 on the list for me. And if fans will remember,
messing up your hands.
He had a rough start, I think, against the Dodgers, and he came into and punched the bench. Number 1, benches don't punch back.
He shouldn't get paid.
And number 2, wood doesn't really give.
Yeah, he shouldn't get paid.
Like that was
being injured.
That was silliness.
Like that.
And he was having an all-star level beginning to the season there. But Huascar Ynoa should be coming back as well. And so now you have a good problem because you're looking at Charlie Morton, Max Fried, Drew Smyly, Tukey. I feel like I'm leaving someone out of there, but also you'll have now Huascar Ynoa to throw back into the mix. Kyle Mueller. So you'll have to decide what you want to do between Tukey, Smyly, and Mueller, and then again get Huascar Ynoa back in there because I think he's probably one of your top 3 or 4 pitchers. So good problems to have for the Braves as they're starting to get healthy again, and I think a good sign. A majority of these signings are really paying off. I mean, even in the bullpen, it's paying off. It's been good to see. Alex Anthopoulos, I think, deserves whatever bonus he gets at the end of the year because he did a hell of a job at the trade deadline.
It seems like the Braves are hitting their stride. They're 1 game away, 1 loss away from being 58-54. So they would have been 4 games over 500 had they not blew that 2-0 lead. But that's okay. It's okay. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They put on a little win streak. What was it? 4 games? About 4 games in a row. That's exciting to see. And now you're going into a tough series with the Reds. Dare I say, try to take this series, go 2-1.
I think for sure.
If you go 1-2, it's not going to kill you. It's not going to hurt you. But even though the Phillies are, like you said, the hottest team in the MLB right now, 8 straight wins, but you have to be excited as a Braves fan because now you have a little glimmer of hope. They've broken the quote unquote curse and things of that nature. So now they've extended the win streak. It's something to be excited about. And
Well,
now they have some favorable series up next.
I think the thing that had been so frustrating for Braves fans all season was they were never overtly bad.
No, they were.
Right? They were never just horrible. It was just kind of the microcosm of the season was that stretch. That was that stretch for 18 games after the All-Star break was win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. It was just always teetering below 500. You get to 500, you lose a couple. You get to 500, you lose 3, right? You just could never get it. Now you're above 500, and it seems like you caught your stride. So this team was never bad. They could just never string it together. And really, they haven't strung it together, I'd say, yet. You've still kind of been there. You're only, 2 games over 500, but just that mental leap where you got over 500 for the first time all year last week, I think was a huge leap. And then you go on that 4-game winning streak, and that was only the 3rd time you've had a 4-game winning streak all year. If you remember, you started the season 0-4, and then you won 4 in a row to get back to 500, and then it's just all back and forth since then. You've won 4 in a row one other time since then, but that's your longest win streak on the year is 4. Whereas you're only 2 games back from the Phillies, and they're hitting their stride, right? They've won 8 games in a row. Every team, or at least every decent team, at some point during the year is going to go on a 7, 8, 9, 10-game win streak, right?
Yeah, you're just waiting on the Braves.
You're going to have that. Like, I really would be curious to go back and look if the Braves somehow make the playoffs, if a playoff team has ever gone through the season and not won more than 4 games in a row.
I think they'll make the playoffs. I have the confidence.
Well, you better win the division because you're not catching up in the wild card.
No, you're not catching up in the wild card for sure. But the division, I think they could win the division. I had my reservations about a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, actually, but they've hit their stride, and I think they need to get over that hump of, being a game or 2 under 500, just hitting 500. Now you're 2 games over, and after this series with the Reds, you got 2 series that's favorable for you against the Marlins and the Orioles.
Yep.
You got to take advantage of that before you play, the Dodgers and the Giants.
And you get the Diamondbacks in there as well.
But you get another solid team. You're playing some of the best teams.
You're playing the Dodgers and the Giants might be the best team in baseball.
And the Dodgers might be the second best team. They've had a lot of injuries.
Division,
yeah, they happen to be in the same division. So, man, you better take advantage of these next couple of games because it's going to be brutal for the Braves. But this is a team that's always going to put a winning performance on the field, a winning culture on the field.
Yeah, well, luckily for you, you're not the only ones having to hit that West Coast swing. The Phillies are going to have that coming up as well. But you do finish the season with 6 games against the Phillies and against the Mets. So when you finish that up, we're getting down to it. When you finish up the season, you're going to have a chance to go out there and win the division if you can hold on, as you said, through this tough part of the schedule. Because once you come out the other side of that schedule, you have another series against the Marlins. You have another series against the Nationals, another series against the Diamondbacks, who have been one of the worst teams in baseball. So if you can just make it through a couple of tough series and scrounge 500 out of those series and then take advantage of the bad teams, I think the Braves are going to be right there. But again, as we sit 2 games back of the Philadelphia Phillies, the Braves have the night off tonight. Tomorrow they begin a series at home with the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds 10 games over 500, and they will send out Sonny Gray to face Drew Smyly. Pretty similar ERAs for those guys, pretty similar innings pitched. So it should be a really fun one coming up. We get to see a couple of really good first basemen in that series as well. Freddie Freeman, obviously for the Braves, who I think quietly is having an all-star caliber season.
Okay.
For the Braves. Or not all-star, MVP caliber season for the Braves. He was already an all-star, so yeah, he's been all-star caliber. MVP level season. He started off slow, but he's almost back to hitting 300.
Oh, okay.
When you think about how slow he started this season, the fact that he's almost back, he's at 24 home runs, which we're talk about how good Ronald Acuna was before he got hurt.
Yeah, he had a lot of home runs.
He has 24 home runs.
Wow.
Ronald Acuna is still tied for the team lead in home runs right now. Freddie Freeman's at 24. Austin Riley's at 23, but Ronald Acuna still tied with Freddie Freeman for the lead on the team in home runs. I think Ozzie passed him. He was right there in RBIs too, but Ozzie's now leading the Braves with 72. But yeah, you get Freddie Freeman against Joey Votto, who Joey Votto's had a heck of a year, batting .273, 67 RBIs, 23 home runs. And then really, I think for Braves fans, first look at a guy who another guy who thinks having an MVP level season, Nick Castellanos in the outfield for the Reds, 323 average for him on the season, 575 slugging percentage. He's been unbelievable in the outfield for the Reds. So really fun series coming up. You take 2 out of 3 from that one. You're feeling pretty good about yourself beginning a really important stretch for the remainder of the season for the Braves. We got more to come here on Second Down. We'll come back right after this. Christian Gokel alongside Cam Urshery here on ESPN Radio. Cam, I want to get your thoughts, man, because
You had some harsh words for him at the beginning, but Team USA,
Oh man,
they go out there and they pull it out. They win the gold medal in the Olympics. They avenge their loss to France. And now they're talking like big game. Like, because everybody's talking smack about us because we lost to France. And so you didn't just lose to France. You lost to some teams you should never even consider losing to. But just curious on your thoughts. Team USA goes out, carries on the tradition, wins gold.
They avenged those losses against France and Australia, but I still don't back off of what I said because that's me. I'm not going to back off. But I was proud that the mental and tough fortitude. They needed Devin Booker and Drew Holiday. They came in big. Devin Booker came in big. I want to say the semifinal game when they play. I think it was Australia or no, it was Spain. He took over in the third quarter, but they needed that. They needed that boost, that help, but it finally looked like they were interested after they took a few L's. I guess this is the type of team that needed that. But Kevin Durant, 30 points in 2012.
Yeah, I was about to say, I say this with no shame. I say this with no shame because I don't know as much about basketball as a lot of people do. I am a very casual basketball fan. But I feel like watching basketball, Team USA should be able to send Kevin Durant out with 4 other guys and win every game.
There you go. That's
like,
how I
don't
thought
care
it would
who
be.
they have from the other countries. If you send Kevin Durant out, which is 4 other dudes, he should be able to win those games.
They put their dominance out there. Kevin Durant is the greatest Team USA player ever. 30 points in 2012. USA team to play in the Olympics. 30 points in 2012 in the closeout game. 30 points in 2016 and then 29 this year.
I do think people forget because in like the mid 2000s, 2008, when they won and it was LeBron and Kobe and all those guys, Dwayne Wade.
He was the leader.
Was the best player
he was
on
the best
that
player.
team.
He was the best player. And then it was Melo. Melo's been the all-time leading scorer. Then KD just broke that
Is
this
Kevin
year.
Durant the best player in the NBA right now?
Heck no. It's still LeBron James. Heck no. You can't take
all
that
those
title
AARP
away.
cards out in LA right now, and you're still saying they're the best.
I just don't. No, I'll put it like this, and we don't have a few more
I
seconds.
think this is the first year we ever saw LeBron James as mortal.
True, but I'll put it like this: when LeBron James had to get 2 wins against Golden State 2015, he did it.
Cam, that was
Kevin Durant
6
couldn't
years
even
ago.
get 1 win against Milwaukee. I mean, 2 wins against Milwaukee.
Cam, that was 6 years ago.
He couldn't get 2 wins against
I'm
Milwaukee.
not saying is Kevin Durant better than 2015 LeBron. I'm asking, is he better than 2021 LeBron?
No.
All right.
Nope. He doesn't
All right.
control the game like that. No.
All right. Well, there you go. Cam Ursery, LeBron still number 1 in his mind. Big show coming up on 3 and Out. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Kevin Thomas will take you to 6 o'clock. Hope everyone has a great night. No Braves baseball, but we'll talk to you tomorrow.